This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should, too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go. Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida, this is Cruise Radio.
Hey, what's up? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for making Cruise Radio a part of your day. Very happy to have you here, my friend. Coming at you from Shanghai, China, where I'm just here for a couple more days and heading back to Florida on Friday. On the line right now is staff writer Richard Sims. Hey, Richard.
Well, it must be nice. Shanghai. Let me guess. You're going to go to Disneyland so that you can take lots of pictures and rub that in my face as well. Great to talk to you.
It seems like every, couple months, the cruise ducks are in the news again.
Yeah, and it's happened again. They're very popular, and some people don't particularly like the idea of them. They don't like them. They think they should not be left around the ships. They look at them almost as pollution. This time around, the people who are upset about crew members finding the ducks. Now, not finding ducks and throwing them away, which some have suggested the crew members should do, but finding ducks and, just like a passenger, enjoying them. Apparently, a lot of crew members really are into this, and they think it's a lot of fun, and they're happy to take part in this, just like a lot of regular passengers. But of course, there are complainers everywhere, and if you can complain about something, you will. So somebody took this to John Heald, the brand ambassador at Carnival Cruise Line, and said, this should not be allowed. Why are they allowed to take part in this? And he had basically the best answer in the world. He said, honestly, do people really mind if the crew, quote, steal, unquote, the hidden ducks? They love them too. It brings them joy. But based on today's posts, if you think the beards, which are the big wigs at Carnival, should instruct the crew not to take them, please let me know. Of course, the comments in this, there was thousands of comments, and they were all almost, I don't know that I saw a single one that said, oh, the crew shouldn't be allowed to. They were like, of course they should. It's fun for everyone. Basically, stop taking everything so seriously. And if that's going to ruin your cruise, then maybe you shouldn't go on a cruise. That's me talking, not John Heald. But yeah, so, once again, cruise ducks cause a little bit of controversy, but they bring a whole lot of joy to people. And I kind of love finding out that the crew is into them too. I think that's fun, Like, we're always trying to think of things to bring the crew, to give them other than, like, for example, to give your room steward other than just cash, which of course I always want to give them cash. But the fact that they're having fun finding ducks, more power to them. They have hard lives. Let them enjoy.
And moving on to an equally important topic, though, Princess is upping its pizza game, and it started by breaking a world record.
I don't know about you, but I've always wanted to be in the Guinness World Book of Records. When I was a kid, I had one of those paddle ball things. It's like a paddle with a ball on the string. And I was convinced that I was going to be in the World's Book of Records. It turns out that in order to do that, you actually have to have somebody there from the Guinness World Book of Records to witness it. You can't just call them and be like, hey, I broke a record. Well, Princess did exactly that. They had representatives from the World Book of Records, from Guinness, there on the ships. And what they did was they had the world's largest pizza party held in multiple locations, which basically means they handed out 60,000 pieces of pizza across the entire fleet. But this wasn't just like an attempt to get in the Book of World Records or anything like that, of course. This was actually to promote something, and that was that they have partnered up with 13-time world pizza champion Tony Giamatti, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, and somebody can let me know, because they love telling me when I get that wrong. He's introducing 5 new pizzas, which will debut at Alfredo's on the Sun Princess, the biggest and newest ship in the fleet. And over the summer, they're going to be rolling them out across the rest of the fleet. So, it's sort of a mixed bag, because there were some people who weren't so happy that Alfredo's went on Sun Princess from being, it had been a free venue on other ships in the fleet, and now it was a pay venue. But if I'm going to pay for something, and especially if I'm going to pay for pizza, if it's going to be made by a 13-time world champion, I'm willing to give it a try. So that was why they broke the world record. And, they got some publicity out of it, which is great. And I'll be interested to hear feedback on these new pizzas.
Meanwhile, one cruise line is adding a new perk for guests staying in their most expensive suite.
So over the last maybe decade or so, as the cruise lines have introduced these ship within a ship concepts, which we talk about all the time, on Celebrity, it's the Retreat. On NCL, it's the Haven. They're also looking for new perks to give these people. And they're, some people think that they're creating a caste system, which honestly, everything in life is a caste system. The person living in the penthouse doesn't care that you live in the basement, In this case, MSC is offering exclusive shore excursions to those who are staying in the yacht club. And so these are going to be something a little bit different than what you might be able to get as a regular passenger on MSC. For example, they have like a perfume making workshop when you're in France, or when you're in Italy, they'll have a special pesto making class. They have a high-end, there's lots of catamaran excursions, but they have a high-end catamaran excursion, which I'm willing to bet involves champagne, that they're going to offer in Cozumel. And basically, this will be point-to-point, meaning on the day that you arrive, when it's time for your excursion, your butler will take you to the elevator, and he will escort you down and hand you over to the people who are running these high-end excursions. So, you don't have to mix with the rest of the riffraff. It's an interesting idea. I'm actually doing MSC Meraviglia. I am staying in the yacht club, so I'll be interested to see what they have to offer, what the prices are, and really how different the experience is from the normal shore excursion.
And for the first time in 15 years, a cruise line is set to sail out of Philly. And this is not to be confused with the SS United States, who is currently sitting in Philly.
Right, because this ship is actually going to go somewhere. It's actually going to set sail. There is a little bit of a catch, though. So Norwegian Cruise Line is going to be home porting the Norwegian Jewel in Philadelphia. But if you want to sail from there, you're going to have to wait, because it doesn't take place until April of 2026. That's when this new slate of sailings are going to start. This ship is the sister ship to one of my all-time favorites, the Norwegian Gem. She was the first ship I was ever on. I think that she is the ship I have sailed the most on, because she used to be home based here in New York. She's not anymore, but the Jewel is almost exactly like the Gem. They're both really great ships, and it is going to be home porting in Philly. And like we said, this is the first time in 15 years that a ship has actually been home ported there. They're going to do a series of 7 and 9 night sailings to Bermuda, because that's basically what you do when you sail out of the East Coast. You either go to Nassau or you go to Bermuda on a 7-day trip. Of course, because it has been 15 years, the port needs a little help. There's some work that needs to be done to get it ready. It sounds as if this is a little bit of an experiment, because NCL has very specifically said that they will be the only cruise line sailing out of Philadelphia between April and October of 2026. So it's a little unclear if this is sort of to test the waters, and maybe they'll then extend it, whether they decide to do it year round or seasonal. But it's nice that people at the East Coast are going to have another port. One of the things Carnival has always prided itself on is that it's, what do they say? I think they say they're 5 miles from, or 5-hour drive from pretty much anywhere. You're like 5 hours away from one of their home ports. So to see NCL expanding, and, they're in Boston, they're in New York. So to see them taking on another East Coast port is kind of exciting. It'll be fun to see how well it works for them.
And Royal Caribbean had a very special party earlier this week, welcoming a new ship to the fleet.
That would be the Utopia of the Seas, which hosted a big party in Port Canaveral. The godmother of this ship is Meghan Trainor, and she performed. One of the cool things they did was they had a contest, and 52 of her fans won a trip to attend this and to go on the 3-day, voyage that followed the party. And the reason they did 52 was this ship is going to be doing 3 and 4 night sailings. And so they said one fan for each weekend in the year. There are 52 weekends in the year, so they drew 52 names for this contest. Those people were allowed to bring somebody. So 52 of the people in attendance were prize winners, and who were also supposedly fans of Meghan Trainor. Utopia is, like I said, they're going to be doing almost exclusively short sailings. The first one is a 3-day sailing. They just left a few days ago, going to Perfect Day at Coco Cay. One of the kind of interesting things about this particular ship is that it is doing these 3 and 4 night sailings. And most people would probably agree that a ship this size, because Utopia is a big ship. It's not like, the Norwegian Gem or even the Queen Mary or something like that, a smaller ship. Utopia is a large ship. And it would be almost impossible to really get a good sense of it. You probably can't even figure out where your stateroom is in 3 days. You'll still be wandering around the hallways lost after 3 days. The thought seems to be that, yes, you will not be able to experience this whole ship, but it will give you a taste of the cruise life. It'll give you a taste of what this ship has to offer, and it will therefore, you will be excited to book other cruises, whether on this ship or other ships, because you'll see that there's so much to do. Now, my concern would be that a first-time cruiser who, is doing their first 3 or 4 day cruise gets on the ship and is overwhelmed and sort of says, oh my gosh, there was all this stuff to see and do, and I didn't get to see and do any of it. I don't know, maybe cruising isn't for me. Maybe I should just go to Shanghai Disneyland with Doug. So it'll be interesting to see sort of how that plays out. One other interesting thing I noticed, this is very strange. For some reason, in the sailing of this ship on February 3rd, 2025, instead of going its normal route, which includes a stop at Perfect K, they're going to make, or Perfect Day at Coco Cay, they're going to make 2 stops at Perfect Day. And they sent a letter to people who are going to be on this particular sailing. Again, it's just this one sailing, February 3rd, 2025, saying, hey, to give you the best experience possible, we're going to go to Nassau and we're going to make 2 stops at Perfect Day. And what they're doing is they're replacing a sea day. And now this is where I get to be the cynic. And I'm going to say, well, of course it makes sense for them to do 2 days at Perfect Day, because think of all the money they make at Perfect Day, whether it's renting the loungers, whether it's renting a cabana, whether it's getting your kids to pay so they can go on that giant water slide that your child is going to see as soon as you arrive and demand that you pay for them to go on it. It definitely feels like the kind of thing that's a little bit of a money grab. Yes, they would still make money when the ship is at sea because, of course, you've got the casino and the restaurants and stuff. But I think you make a lot more money at Perfect Day. I'm wondering if they're looking at this as an experiment to say, maybe we should do more of this. The only thing that I don't really understand is why they're waiting until February to do this. But I don't know. That's just my cynical thought on that.
Yeah, no, I can see them maybe using this as a pilot to see what it would be like. Remember when Disney did this, the double dip, when the cruise line just restarted and very few ports were open? Disney was like, well, we'll just do a double dip at Castaway. And all those cruises sold out, well, whatever capacity was at that point. I was on one of them, and they all sold out like in minutes. So people love those double dips.
People love, it is well established that people love the private destinations, whether it's Great Stirrup Cay or Coco Cay. That people love that. So I can understand wanting to do that. But again, it is definitely a great money grab because you are keeping that money in the family as opposed to going, say, to Freeport or someplace like that and letting people wander off and spend money in other people's shops.
And if you're looking for a longer cruise, Carnival has a couple of one-off longer sailings on an Excel class ship.
This is kind of exciting, especially if you're a fan of Carnival's ship, the Mardi Gras, which longtime listeners will remember. I was so excited when that ship came out that I broke my own rule of generally only sailing out of the New York area, and I flew to Florida because it was such a cool, game-changing ship. So it's been 5 years since that ship launched, which is almost impossible to believe. So it's time for it to go into a dry dock. What they're doing is, in mid-September, the ship is going to do a 14-night transatlantic from Port Canaveral to Barcelona. That means you'll have 9 days at sea, which is amazing when you've got a ship like that you want to really explore and try all the venues and, ride the Bolt coaster while you're up high above the sea. They'll make several stops, including one at the still being developed private destination Celebration Key. Then the ship will go into dry dock, and in mid-October, so about a month later, it will do the reverse tour. It'll do a 14-day transatlantic going back to Port Canaveral to resume her normal schedule, which means if you really wanted to, so first of all, you've got the opportunity to do 14 days and a transatlantic on this amazing ship. But what's kind of cool is if you have the time, and apparently people like you who go to all over the country have this kind of time, you could do the 14-day sailing, spend a month in kicking around Barcelona, touring that area, then get back on the ship and do another 14 days back. So you could do like a double transatlantic with a month in the middle. And to me, I mean, if I had the time and I could get away from my job for 2 months, I would do that in a heartbeat. It sounds amazing.
So again, this is in fall of 2025 for both of them. It leaves Port Canaveral, goes over to Barcelona. The ship's going to dry dock, and then the ship is coming back again to Port Canaveral after its dry dock stint, correct?
Yep, exactly. And you're right. I did not mention 2025. I was making it sound like it was 2024. So who knows? Maybe by 2025, I won't have a job anymore, and I can, take this trip.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify because on my news briefs, when I was recording them in Shanghai yesterday, I said mid-2025, and I failed to say mid-October 2025. It was written on the prompter. I was just no excuse, just skip the words. And
I like that you're finding every opportunity you can to rub it in that you're in Shanghai. Last time it was the Philippines, now it's Shanghai. Where are you going next? Which one of my dream destinations are you going to next? Bora Bora?
No, I'm flying home this weekend, actually, after been over here for 3 weeks. So, speaking of that, not to kind of ramble on about this, but I do want to say Carnival Panorama is doing this same type of thing that you were just talking about, that sailing, but they're doing it from the West Coast. So they're going from LA, and it's going to a shipyard in Singapore, I believe, somewhere in Asia, and then it's coming back. It'll also be its first shipyard. And I actually have friends on it who are taking it over they don't fly. So they're taking it over, staying in Asia for the month and taking the trains and stuff around, the bullet trains and everything, and then taking the ship back. So they'll be gone for like 2 months.
I feel like Panorama is a ship that got lost. I don't know if it was because of the timing, or if the only thing I really remember about being excited about when Panorama came out was they were doing the trampoline thing, which that's the only ship they did it on, and I don't even know if they're still doing it. Panorama kind of felt like it got lost when Mardi Gras and Jubilee and Celebration came out. There was a lot of excitement about them. But Panorama, it was like, oh, okay, well, here's a new ship, and it's going to be sailing on the West Coast, which is very cool because they didn't, that was the first time they were doing that in a long time. But it never really seemed to have the hype around it that some of the other new ships from Carnival had.
All right, staff writer Richard Sims with Cruise News, as always. Thank you, man.
Always glad to be here.
Just back from a cruise? Let's talk about it. Email Doug at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com. Tim and his wife just returned earlier this year on MSC's World Europa. It was a Mediterranean cruise out of Barcelona for 7 nights. It was both Tim's first time to Europe and first time on MSC Cruises. How you doing, buddy? Good to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been a while. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it sure has. Your first time to Europe and MSC, killing 2 birds with 1 stone here. So before we get over to Europe, we'll take a step back here. Give me some pre-cruise thoughts. What made you want to take this cruise on MSC World Europa and go to Europe for the first time?
Well, Europe has been on the bucket list for a very long time, probably 30 years, and it always seemed pretty unattainable. The prices to go to Europe, I never even really looked, I guess, to be honest, because I just always thought it was so unattainable. Then last year, my daughter, she is going to become a French teacher, and she needed to study abroad for 3 months. And I thought, hey, what an opportunity. Let's go visit her. I got online and I saw what the flights cost. We couldn't make it to go see her. But when I saw the flights, I thought, we can do this. We can go. And so I started checking out the cruises, and we get really busy. I have to work a lot in the summertime. So we started thinking about February, and this is when they are, as far as I can tell, the absolutely cheapest. Not even all the cruise lines are going at that time. It seems like some of them even take a break, but we found this MSC cruise for, I think, about $1,800 for an interior stateroom to cruise around the Mediterranean. Between the flight and everything, we spent just about $4,000 to go to Europe and do a 7-day cruise on MSC. And we've spent that just doing a cruise out of Florida.
Yeah, I was going to say $4,000 for two people with air and cruise it's a pretty amazing deal.
It is. So, and we have priced the other months and stuff, and yeah, it gets crazy. Now that is the off season, so we weren't sure what to expect weather-wise. When we did get there, it was a little rainy and stuff, but that cleared up, and it was decent enough that we were actually able to use the pool and the hot tub on the ship and everything, and it was actually a great experience.
How did y'all handle your first international flight?
I can handle things like that better than my wife, but she actually did a lot better than I even thought she would. So it wasn't, it's long and it's pretty cramped when you're just doing the coach and everything, but we made it and an experience, but we did a lot better. It worked out to when we landed and got into Barcelona. We just forced ourselves to stay awake because we got in at like noon. And so we just stayed up and went to bed really early. So by the time we got up the next morning to get on the ship, we were kind of on the right schedule.
So you go to embark MSC World Europa. Well, actually, before you embark, did you get to do anything or see any sights in Barcelona before you boarded?
Not so much, being that we just got in. We kind of checked into our hotel, got something to eat, and kind of hung out there. We did we stay an extra day on the other end, so that's when we got to see around Barcelona.
Oh, very cool. So you make your way to the cruise terminal. A lot of cruise terminals there in Barcelona. So how was the embarkation process for y'all?
Smooth. We weren't sure what to expect, and even dealing with the language barrier or anything, but everything, being that we had cruised before, went smooth. We had no problems. Checked in. I had all the paperwork, and we were on the ship in no time.
Being a first-time MSC cruiser, what were your first impressions when you walked on board MSC World Europa?
It was a beautiful ship. Yeah, the ship had only been sailing for like 440 days or something like that when we got on it. So a very new ship, very clean, beautiful. That's one thing I've seen other pictures of some of the other MSC ships, and it seems like that's their thing. They try to make those ships look elegant and beautiful. Huge chandelier in the center, LED screen on the ceiling of the main, I guess you'd call it kind of atrium area and stuff. It was a very beautiful ship.
What kind of stateroom did you book on this 7-night cruise, and how was it throughout your week?
It was wonderful, and this was an extra bonus. We had booked an interior cabin, and we got upgraded to a balcony.
Nice.
For free.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I don't know if that's the off-season thing or what it is. The thing that was weird about it was we had just noticed, we didn't get an email or anything, we just noticed our cabin number changed. We weren't sure why that happened. And after going online and reading, it seems like that's a trend. They will just upgrade you, and they don't even give you an email or anything. And the only complaint I saw about that was some people picked a specific room to be close to elevators because they had mobility issues. And we did get moved way back away from the elevators when we were there, but that didn't matter to us. We really appreciated the balcony, but not letting you have the option if you really want it or not, I guess for some people that could be an issue.
Did you do the status match before you sailed with MSC?
Sure did. So yes, on Royal Caribbean, we are platinum, and so we were silver on their level.
What did that get you?
I can't remember all that we got with that. That's an interesting question. I can't remember. It wouldn't seem like it was anything too extravagant. In fact, I actually have it up on my computer. $50 onboard credit and a milestone award, which I don't even know that we got that. Plus the other levels before that too. So not anything too great. It looks like gold is where you start getting some things like a birthday cake and a bunch of complimentary photos and different things like that.
How was the dining on board? We'll start at the buffet area. Now, with MSC's newer ships, I haven't been on this one yet, but the previous class, they kind of have two different buffets. Is that set up the same way?
They did have a separate, I want to say that almost called like a family buffet area or anything. So that seemed to have more kid-friendly foods on it at times. We only went up there once to check it out, and it looked like they had some pizza and maybe, I'm not even sure what else was on there. But now, being that this was our first time on MSC, I've heard a lot of things about the food. Some people seem to really love it, some don't. And we weren't sure what to think. We weren't sure if it was a European buffet, or this is what would be in the United States either. It was okay. We found things to eat and everything. We didn't think it was exceptionally great, and we didn't think it was bad either. We were really indifferent about it.
When you say it really wasn't what you were expecting, what do you mean by that? Did not have the food you wanted, or?
We're not even sure what we expected. The first day, they did actually have mashed potatoes like one time, and then that was it. It was gone for good. You never saw it again. And it seemed like a lot of repeat items and things like that. And not that they were good or bad. It didn't seem either or. It just seemed like it kind of repeated and was the same foods a lot, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. How about their pizza? Was their pizza pretty solid?
It wasn't as good as I was hoping either, because that's the one thing I heard, that they had the absolutely best pizza. Mm-hmm. It's okay. I won't say it was bad. I ate my share of it and everything, but it was just okay. I was expecting to get on there and be like, whoa, we're in Europe. It's Italy's here. This is going to be the greatest pizza I've ever had, and it was just all right.
Outside of the buffet areas, how about the main dining room? What time dining did you have, and how was your experience throughout your cruise?
I don't know what time dining we had because we never ate in the dining room.
Okay, fair enough. How about where did you go out? Where did you go outside? Did you have specialty restaurants or?
No specialty. We did the buffet. We did. They have a pizza/burger area. We ate in there a number of times, and I'm drawing a blank what else we might have eaten right now, because I know I spent quite a bit. Like I said, I ate my share of the pizza and this burger area they had. They actually had quite a few different things, not only burgers and fries, some dessert items. They had donuts there at one point. It was really varied there. It was very different there.
Collectively, looking down at your food experience on MSC, being a first-time cruiser with them, would you give it a pass or fail?
I'd still give it a pass. And another feature that they had that we really liked, that would be kind of neat for some of the other cruise lines to have, is on the tables, they actually have a button you can push that will call the servers over. And so that you can get your drinks, whether you're getting a soda or a drink or whatever, that way. And you don't have to try to flag them down. They actually know what table that signal comes from. And so I thought that was a really cool touch, that we could get our food, sit down and push the button, and then have our drinks brought to us.
Yeah, that's awesome there. Did you have the drink package or any dining packages or anything?
When I say that price of that cruise, that included Wi-Fi and their drink package.
Okay.
In that price too.
Wow.
So that was the level we booked at.
How was the entertainment over the 7 nights for y'all?
Better than I thought it would be. I wasn't sure what to expect. I heard it seemed Cirque du Soleil and different things, and it actually was. One night, one of the shows we saw was all singing, and they went from everything from singing basically pop songs to opera. And it was a really weird mix, but it was very cool. And they had another show about Amelia Earhart, and I really don't know how the show was about her. They were just trying to tie together different things like acrobats and jugglers and guys doing stunts on motorcycles and stuff. So it didn't really have a real story to it, but yet they were just using it to tie these things together. And it was very interesting to see I thought it was interesting, especially the guys doing the motorcycles. They went in this globe thing, and they were two guys spinning around on motorcycles. And I thought, you got to have somebody specific for that. You can't just pull somebody else who can sing and put them in the show. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And they were pretty good production shows. Outside
of the production shows, any music around the ship, comedy, anything like that?
I don't recall. No comedy, but they did do trivia, and it did work. I even won a music trivia, nice. Which I was surprised, because there was some, they tried to do stuff. They were doing some rock from the United States, but they were also doing some other things. So I'm not even sure how I was able to win, but I won the trivia. So, nice. So I got a hat and stuff. But yeah, no comedians, no real bands playing around the ship either, or anything like that. That's one of the things we really like to do on a lot of the ships, is we like to watch some of the bands perform and things. So it didn't have any of that either. So from what we were used to, and there's no sail away party really either. So gives a lot less of that kind of stuff, more laid back. So if you are somebody who's going for the party, I wouldn't suggest this type of cruise, but it is more laid back, which we enjoyed.
How about the casino as far as the smoking situation in and around it? I know that MSC has had different rules on different ships for the past couple of years.
I personally didn't notice too much at all, surprisingly. I thought maybe because it seems Europeans have a reputation for smoking, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But so in my mind, I thought maybe this was going to be a lot worse. And I really didn't notice it that much at all. It seems like it's a pretty good, wide open area for that. You do have to go through the casino to get to one of the show areas. Oh, yeah, and that was some of the shows. That was bands. I take that back. They were, and nice that it wasn't pre-recorded tracks. They might be playing along to a track, but there was actual musicians playing and people singing in some shows on the back part of the ship.
Speaking of like entertainment, did I see, and I could be totally wrong because I'm going by memory here, bumper cars or anything on board this ship, like any kind of fun stuff?
They do. They have a whole sports complex that at some point it's a basketball court or something, and then, bumper cars. And I can't even remember what all went in there. We went in there and looked around a bit and everything, and it seemed to be probably set up a little bit more for teenagers and stuff. Not that adults couldn't do it, but it did seem like it was set up to be more of a teenage zone. But yeah, they have this. It's really neat. All these that they're transporting around these bumper cars, and they stack up on the side, and then they use the court in that area for different things. I think they might even have had roller skating.
The ships that are built in France, there at Chantiers de Atlantique, they always have like really long looking pools, in my opinion, like with the Celebrity Edge class ships. Did this one have a pretty long pool on it, or was it a typical cruise ship pool?
It did seem like a long pool. We didn't hit the outdoor pool, but it also has a nice indoor area with a pretty good sized pool and 3 or 4 hot tubs in there, and it's covered. So that was one way we were able to enjoy it kind of on the rainier days. And then on the very back of the ship too, yes, they were very more rectangular, 2 of them pools on the backside and deep. They're not a wading pool. They are, once you get in, you're chest deep in water.
So how were the sea days as far as crowds and congestion?
It seemed fine. It's a big ship, and it's laid out to where we never really felt crowded. It has a ton of elevators, so even in the elevator areas, it always seemed to flow really well. We never, ever really felt crowded in any particular area at all. So I did like that about the ship. The only thing about the ship, I would say, if you do book on the ship and look at where cabins are, because the best way I can describe the layout of the ship is kind of like the Starship Enterprise, where you got the main part and then they got the 2 parts that go way down. I don't know. I'm not a Star Trek fan, but it's I don't know if those are the big engines on there or whatever, but it's kind of Y-shaped. That's the way it is. And if you have a cabin like we ended up in, down in the bottom of those Ys, you got to come all the way to that main part to get to the elevator. So it can be kind of a walk if you do have mobility issues or anything. But it is a very nice and beautiful ship, and that part is cool because that's where our balcony was, in that back area, very open. And like I said, the only complaint would be is if you had to walk the distance, and which we didn't mind. Yeah,
I was going to say, walking on a cruise ship isn't a bad thing with your caloric intake, right?
No, we try to take the steps and walk as much as we can. So,
ports of call on this one. What ports did you hit? So what we'll do here is give us the port of call, give us the highlight, and we can move to the next one.
All right. We took off from Barcelona, and then our first stop was in Marseille. We had never been to Europe. Most everything we wanted to do was just to be able to get around and see everything. So there we did a city tour and stopped at a couple of big sightseeing areas like the Paris Longchamps, which is a big reservoir thing built in who knows when and stuff like that. So that was a really cool. And we also then had a whole big time where we could walk around. They took us down to the fishing port area where all the fishermen have their ships or boats and stuff, and we could walk around, and we went to several stores and got some food and things like that. After that, we went to Genoa, Italy, and there we did a panoramic tour. And this one is one of those, if you love taking pictures and scenery, this place is, and this tour in particular was great for that. We have some pictures that look like paintings.
Nice.
Without even a filter, they just turned out so nice. And we haven't done it yet, but we're going to get a couple of them printed out to hang in the house here because they are so beautiful. So that was a great tour there in Genoa. Then we were off to Rome, where we did a tour called the Eternal City. Took us into the Vatican area. We had some time there. We went to the Colosseum. We were outside at the Colosseum. We didn't get to go inside on the tour, but we got to walk around the Colosseum. Our guide was very knowledgeable and gave us so much history. And then part of the tour was we actually went to an Italian restaurant and ate an Italian meal. And the one thing I will say is that MSC, these tours were all booked through MSC. They were good and they were just top notch. They really did a good job on these tours. And then after that, we walked way further into the Spanish Steps and the Trevi Fountain. I think that's how you saw it, Trevi or something like that.
I say Trevi, but it could be pronounced either way, I guess.
All right, yeah, we went there and just wonderful. A lot of walking, so bring some good shoes, which I did not, and I paid for it. But
oh, yeah.
That was a wonderful tour. Then we went to Palermo in Sicily. Mm-hmm. And there was another sightseeing tour. We toured an opera house, which was really interesting. And to go in there, and they actually were doing rehearsals while we were there. And it was interesting how, and the buildings were designed this way for the acoustics, that they didn't have, amplification systems back then. Just them talking on the stage, you could hear everywhere throughout there. It was very interesting. And the building was just beautiful. And same thing, walking around the city, lots of getting to check out some shops. And then we went to La Vetta in Malta. And this became one of our favorite spots because the island of Malta is so small. And it was, we went to the old town, the walled city. And this is what you think of when you see the super skinny cobblestone roads with the houses on both sides with the colored doors and everything. And it was another one of those were beautiful, and we took tons of pictures. It became one of those places where you're like, oh, I would almost like to live here because it just seemed so peaceful and beautiful. And then we went back to Spain, and that's when we just basically walked and toured around the city ourselves and went to the church. What is it? The La Familia or something like that. The beautiful, beautiful church they've been building for over 100 years they still haven't completed.
When you were there, I know it was off season. So was it pretty easy to navigate, or were there a lot of crowds still?
It was still kind of busy, but it was enough that you could walk around. We didn't go inside, but we were able to walk around the whole thing. And I got tons of pictures of that too. And, but even though it's off season, it's still fairly busy there. I've seen some of the pictures of how it gets, and it looked like so it could be shoulder to shoulder during the busy season, but it was just fine. It was easy to navigate and neat to see, and Barcelona overall, as far as the people and the city, I think, and maybe because we spent a little bit more time and did more on our own there, but that really became one of our favorite cities. We liked the people at the hotel were exceptionally helpful, and everybody, even our cab drivers, were just so wonderful and nice there. It was really nice.
It was funny. You talk about Rome and blisters on your feet. My very first time there, we did a Rome on your own, because you're in Rome like 14, 15 hours, right? Because the shore excursions are typically like 12 or 13 hours because you're talking about taking a bus into Rome or a train and then 8 or 9 hours there and then, the haul back to the ship. So it's a really long day there. I wore flip-flops, did no research at all. My feet were ruined for the rest of the cruise. I mean, I had nasty blisters on my, it was just disgusting. I'm curious though, when you were there in February, how were the crowds in Rome? Because I was there in January and then again in March, and like the Pantheon was just super, super packed and crazy, both in January in March. And so I can only imagine what this summer is going to be like there.
Yeah, that area was fairly busy too. That was probably one of the areas that I felt like we were the closest to other people. That and the Trevi Fountain too. If you wanted to get close to that, you were pretty shoulder to shoulder with everybody if you wanted to try to get close to it at all. But other than that, everything else was pretty well spread out. It was not that bad.
All right, so you had some pretty cool ports of call here. Actually, some awesome ports of call. I've never been to Malta yet, so looking forward to hitting that one day. But out of all the ports you said, and I know you said you really loved Barcelona because you spent the most time there, but out of the actual ports you went to on this jaunt around the Mediterranean, which one was your favorite?
I really liked Malta because of how beautiful it was. But for me, Rome was probably the most interesting and fascinating to me because of the history and everything that happened there. Not a huge history buff, but I am kind of a history buff. So being able to stand there and just stand outside the Colosseum, and I just sat there imagining what it would be like to be outside there and hearing the cheering and stuff happening, nearly 2,000 years ago, and all the stuff that has happened there and everything. So I just really liked Rome overall because of the history. I think if we ever do it again, I think that's a city I would like to go out of. Mm-hmm. It just happened, the flights going to Barcelona, and at the time we didn't even know where we should start or stop. So Barcelona worked out well, but now that we've been there, I think I need to do that. I need to spend some more time in Rome.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get back to Barcelona. How was your debark process?
No problem. We were off. We were able to just grab a taxi right away and head back to our hotel. We had to stay back in our hotel again, thanks to Delta changing our flights. That wasn't the original plan. But so that all went fine. And everybody, and I want you to make sure that I say that too, that everybody who worked on the ship was wonderful and very accommodating, and made us, even though I can't even say that language was much of a barrier. It was maybe at times for a few people, but it wasn't. We were afraid of that, even though we'd never been there. We weren't quite sure what to think. But everybody really took care of us, and everything as far as the people who work for MSC and everything, we were really impressed with how well everything ran. Even when we left for our excursions, we had to meet in the main theater area. And they said, if we're leaving at 8, it was 8 o'clock. And if you weren't there, you were going to miss it because they were walking out the door at 8 o'clock. They were running that thing, they were on it. They were just taking care of business, and we liked that.
I love how straight and to the point Europeans are. If they say 8 o'clock, they mean it. They're not waiting around. They're not going to blow the ship's horn and say, hey, you have 5 more minutes. If they're saying they're leaving at 7, they're leaving at 7, whether it's a short excursion or pulling out to the next port of call.
Yes, and that's where having my wife with helps, because I am the one who's, me being there right on time. If they say be there at 7, I'm the guy who's there right at 7 because that's what time they said. But she's got to be 20 minutes early. So she kept me in line there, which is a good thing because they did mean it.
So your first time on MSC, your first time to Europe, any first time tips you can offer anyone who may be doing either of those?
I guess, I see a lot online that MSC doesn't have the greatest reputation, and I wouldn't let that get to you. We really liked it so much. In fact, we have booked MSC's World America for when it comes here to the United States. We liked it so much, we wanted to see what it'd be like to sail out of the United States. So we're already booked on World America because we enjoyed it a lot. And when it comes down to it, too, in the pricing is really good in our opinion. Like I said, we paid, it was something like $1,860, I think it was, for the cruise there in Europe, which included our Wi-Fi and drinks. And yes, that's for an interior cabin, but like I said, then they upgraded us. But I mean, that kind of a price, you can't get a 7-day cruise in the United States for that and include your drinks and everything. It was a wonderful deal, and it was well worth it.
What was your big resource that you used? You're a first-timer going to Europe. I mean, was there any hesitation or nervousness?
We did. I usually book everything myself. I did use a travel agent, and when I contacted her, we had to use them before. They told us that MSC isn't exactly travel agent friendly, which I don't know what that means. And I don't know if it was just with her, but she did not book MSC. So I did all my MSC booking myself, but she did take care of our flights and hotel for us. And so she also did give us a lot of advice and a lot of things about what to do, what to expect. She also set up our original transfers from the airport to our hotel, things like that. So because I hadn't been there, we did use a resource like that. I would probably advise you do that if you can. And if you can find a travel agent that would book the MSC, their website is a little difficult to navigate around until you get a hang of it. But once you do, you can get around there. But it worked out just fine. I mean, probably because of our experience, this was like our 11th cruise. And so I would say that helps. If you're doing this and maybe want your first, second, third cruise, maybe don't try to take that on yourself because there is a lot to do. You know, even just flying, if you've never flown to Europe before, we didn't even understand this transfer business we had to do at first, but she filled us all in. So I'd use an agent to get all that extra information you might need.
I can see the your first time rather, going to Rome being very overwhelming. So I could definitely see where a travel agent could come into play there and kind of, I don't want to say hold your hand, but yeah, kind of hold your hand and walk you through it. Because as you mentioned, you have the transfers, you have the hotels, you have the cruise. Lot of moving parts in a trip, and you have the whole, tacking on the international part of it as well, which can things can go sideways there. And if you're doing it on your own, you might not have any recourse. Like if you have a travel agent, at least they can help you, Right.
And that's a big, for the flights especially, I wanted that, because we've had that before where we had some flight issues and they were able to take care of it while we were in the air and things like that. So, yeah. I didn't have to try to do it while we were trying to move around. And I thought, especially internationally, I was not going to try to mess with that myself.
Looking back, what was the biggest highlight of this cruise for y'all?
Just the overall experience of going to Europe and experiencing these places that you just see in pictures and movies and stuff. That for me was the biggest part. Like I said, the history, we did it on a cruise instead of just flying there and maybe going from city to city. Part of it felt very, very familiar to us because we've cruised so often. So it seemed very, I don't want to use the word scary, but it wasn't as odd or hard because we always knew when we got back to the ship, it was very familiar to us. So that made it a lot easier too, I think. So I thought this was a great way to see Europe, get especially your first taste. Now that we've been there, like I said, I'd like to spend some more days in Rome or something. It's a great introduction to it. And like I said, go in the off season, it's affordable. It's not as bad as you might think.
Well, to put a bow on this interview, your final thoughts of MSC Europa.
Beautiful ship. I can't wait for World America to come here. I think it's going to be a success here, depending on how they do things. Being in Europe, like I said, no sail away party. People get on and off at every port. And so that's a little different that you always have. Every day you walk around the ship, they have the muster stations all set up and all that kind of stuff that they're getting people in. And they will come up to you almost every day and ask if you want to do specialty dining and stuff because they're trying to get the people came on. But a very beautiful ship. And if they have this new ship come here and it looks as beautiful and their pricing is as good and they do some of the things that Americans, I know people really like to sail away parties and the comedians and stuff. If they include those things, I think this is going to be a big deal for the cruising market for that ship to come here.
Tim, I know in the past you've actually done a lot of videos and tours and stuff on YouTube. Can we find anything from your trip on YouTube?
Yes, it's just starting to get all loaded up on there. So we are online as the Cruising Together Couple. You can find that on YouTube and all the social media and everything. So far, we've got our hotel featured on there, and I'm about to post our first day on there, and the rest should be coming really soon here.
The Cruising Together couple will also post that in the show notes at cruiseradio.net. Tim, as always, great talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your review of MSC Europa.
You bet. Appreciate it.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,